Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Moty Fania. I'm a principal engineer at Intel, part of the Advanced Analytics organization, which is an organization that specializes in big data analytics. And I'm going to talk today about a work that we did trying to address the challenge of smart data pipes for the Internet of Things. So let me start with a simplified, well, let's see if it works. Okay, so I'll start with this simplified view of an Internet of Things scenario. Okay, you have basically these things. There could be millions or billions of them. They are transmitting continuously. They are connected. They are transmitting into the cloud. And obviously, in your cloud, you have your infrastructure, your data platforms. In order to provide any kind of insights, you would like to have your analytical platform and with a UI and service that will expose it. So there could be many challenges in all of this scenario, but I'm going to talk specifically on one single challenge, which is the challenge of being able to ingest data with such high concurrency. Think of these millions of devices, billions of them, that are continuously transmitting data into the cloud, and you have to be able to ingest them. But I'm not talking about just being able to have a pipe to ingest them. I'm talking how do we apply processing, stream analytics on this huge data as it flows in. You don't want to do the analytics only as the data reach your database. You want to be able to do it as it flows in. In many cases, it makes sense. So this is the challenge that I'm going to talk about. And I think that I always believe that it will be beneficial to demonstrate how we dealt with this challenge through a use case. So I picked a use case that maybe is not a classical industrial Internet of Things scenario, but I think it's a very interesting one, and it is done for a good cause, so it's worth mentioning. And there's a booth downstairs for anyone who didn't see it, and I'm talking about the work that we do for the Parkinson disease research. And to make a short story, we were approached by Andy Grove, the founder of the Kinetics Foundation, and later by the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And they asked us to ask our team to see if we could help them augment traditional clinical trials with big data analytics. Okay? There is a lot of work that is being done in this domain. Parkinson's disease is a tough disease. It's a brain disorder disease, but the biggest challenge there is that it's quite difficult to track the progression of the disease. There aren't good enough objective measurements to do that. So obviously, we said yes, it's a good cause. And as you can guess, what do you need for big data analytics? You need big data, right? So the first step we did was to find a way to collect the data. And the way we did it is to go to Parkinson patients and augment them with a wearable, a watch. And this watch transmits data continuously, 24/7, through their smartphone, which has sensors by itself, into the cloud. Okay? And as you can understand, having this data being collected continuously can add a lot of value for researchers, for clinicians, and for pharma companies, and of course for the patient itself. But it can be much more helpful if, in addition to the raw data, we could augment it or enrich it with additional data. So think or consider the things that we can do here. I mean, if we could, for example, use our analytics as the data flows in to recognize activities, to be able to know or to help the researcher know what the patient did in any certain of time, was sitting, walking, sleeping, whatsoever, to understand the intensity of the activity, to be able to detect symptoms of the disease, things like tremor, like gait, like sleep disorders, and many other things. So by being able to take the raw data but enrich it with many other artifacts of analytics, we are able now to give much, much more. So I'm sure that some of you are now scratching their heads asking, is it really a big data problem? Well, it is. It is. We found out very early on that in order to have data that is valid for research, you need to get data in a frequency of 50 hertz, 50 points per second. So if we take the data that has to be collected both from the wearable and the smartphone, we got to approximately 1 gigabyte of data per patient per day. This is a lot of data. So 1,000 patients, which is not too much, for 1 year will generate 365 terabytes. This is a lot of data to manage, to ingest, to analyze. Obviously, you can apply optimization, we do that, but the magnitude of data is big, and it was important to highlight this. So after I gave this background about this use case, I would like to go back to the initial challenge. I was talking about the challenge of being able to apply stream analytics, processing on the data as it flows in the scenario of Internet of Things. So let's consider together what could be the characteristic or requirements for such an ingestion layer. We are talking about an ingestion that obviously has to meet two conditions. It has to be scalable. I mean, we're talking about the Internet of Things scenario. It has to scale. Hopefully, it should scale linearly. And the second thing, it should be high available. So we want it to be high available. So it means it should be fault tolerant. You can't afford losing everything because of a failure of a single component. So it should be able to recover from failures. And we know failures, it's just a matter of when, not if. So these are the two basic conditions, and I believe that they are straightforward. But it becomes more interesting when, for the next characteristic that I'm going to talk about. So first, I began by saying that we want this pipe not to be just a dumb pipe where you move the data. You want it to be smart. We want to be able to apply processing or stream analytics on the data as it flows in, and to be able to trigger actions in near real time, to be able to close the feedback loop as fast as possible in order to react to things where it makes sense. So you do need to be able to do stream processing or stream analytics as the data flows. The second thing is, I think, a bit unique, because since we are going to apply a lot of machine learning algorithms, we know that it would be very beneficial if we could apply the processing at the level of the data of the device or the user. I mean, let's suppose we could get to a situation that the processing unit knows the device or the user. So it can, for example, if you want to detect change, you should have some understanding of what is the baseline in order to be able to detect the change, right? I mean, otherwise, it will be very difficult. So you do need to keep some state at your processing unit that will allow you to apply analytics or any kind of processing at the device level. So this is important. And the last thing, but not least, we want to make it easy to use. We want to allow the developers to focus on their code, on the logic, and less on all of the other aspects like scalability and fault tolerance. They need to focus on writing their code. Preferably, it should be in Java or Scala or familiar language. And they should be easily, they should be capable of easily subscribe to any stream that is required. So these are the requirements, and these are at least the one that we defined to ourselves because we thought that this will be beneficial. And now I'm going to share with you how it looks like. I mean, what we came up with. So this is a high-level overview of the technologies involved in this solution and the way we deployed it. So I didn't say it, but it was very important to us to employ or leverage here open source, strictly open source. And you'll see here that all of the technologies are such. So the first thing that we had to address was the fact that the MQTT protocol, the one that was invented for the Internet of Things, a lightweight protocol that is heavily used, the MQTT brokers are usually not that scalable, and they are not fault tolerant, and they don't meet the criteria that I just mentioned before. So the solution for that was to have n numbers of brokers. They don't know each other. All of them are getting the data from a load balancer, and they all push the data or write the data into a Kafka cluster. So I don't need to explain Kafka, but how do we did it? Each broker like this, we have developed a bridge, basically a Kafka producer that knows to consume the data from the MQTT broker and just produce it or write it into, persist it in the Kafka cluster. So Chen saved me from the need to explain what is Kafka, but Kafka is highly scalable, highly persistent, fast, and we can get to the situation where we have a scalable, persistent broker. This is the first piece, right? You want to be able to have a broker that can scale and persist the data. In this way, we can scale linearly in all of the phases. But this is not the piece that I was talking about, because we also want to be able to process the data, to apply stream analytics. And this is where we employed Acha. Acha is another open source by TypeSafe. And actually, it's a development framework that allows you to develop a highly concurrent and fault-tolerant applications relatively much easier than if you have to deal with, let's say, threads and doing all the clustering yourself. So it's a very powerful language. You could use either Java or Scala. And what it allows us basically to do all of the processing in near real time using Acha, and then if needed to persist them or write them into the target database. So here we get the layer of stream analytics or processing that we were looking for. And all of this flow generates as a whole a very robust and scalable data ingestion. So let me say a few more words about Acha, because I believe this will be beneficial to understand its advantages. So I mentioned already that it's open source. I need to say that it's a very nice framework because it applies the actor model. I'm not sure if you heard about it, but the actor model is a very nice way to abstract the processing unit. So you have a processing entity, a very lightweight one, that can basically do any kind of logic that you want it to be, and it communicates with other actors through messaging. So each one has its own mailbox, they send immutable messages, and all of the work can be done bidirectionally by communicating between the different actors. All of this framework is highly scalable, fault-tolerant, and can provide high performance because it's non-blocking and the messages are flowing in. So how does it look like when we use Acha? So each actor is basically a small piece of code, as I said before, right? It's a small piece of code that is performing a specific task. And since the Acha framework is very efficient in the way it uses threads, a single node of Acha can hold virtually millions of actors like this. Obviously, it depends on how much memory each one consumes and what you do with it, but it can really deal with an enormous amount of actors in a single node, and since you have a cluster, it can obviously scale a lot. So by having this capability, we know that we can apply a lot of processing unit per the millions of devices that could be out there in the things that we are trying to accommodate. So we talked about the actors. When you have a set of actors, this is what is defined as a topology. A set of actors that is performing set of that are communicating, that they are sending messages to each other, and performing a certain set of tasks for a certain device or user or a channel that you're trying to process. So in this case, I've put here a sample Parkinson disease research topology that will demonstrate what potentially can be done, and we are doing in this channel in the context of Parkinson's disease. So for example, you begin by subscribing. I mean, you are in Acha, you are subscribing to the stream. In our case, it's Kafka, right? This is the scalable broker that I taught. So we can subscribe to a stream. We can parse the message, since you have to process a bit. So we are compressing the messages, so we need to uncompress it, to unzip it. And then we can apply different kinds of analytics that are part of the processing. And remember, all of this happens as the data flow in near real time. So the ability to detect, for example, a change in the state of the device or the patient or a certain thing, this is very powerful. The ability to handle predefined rules. So if you have defined predefined rules, you are also able to see if this criteria was met or not, and to trigger an alert. To things like that are specific for the Parkinson, like being able to detect or handle sleep quality or tremor detection, or to aggregate the data. I told you that we are the beginning. We get the data at 50 hertz. Sometimes you don't want to store the data in 50 hertz. So you are able also to aggregate the data. So there are many tasks that you could do, and this topology can do that. And again, we are able to do it at a device level, which is very powerful. So this is one aspect, and this is how we use Acha. But obviously, Acha is there. What was our value, or other than all the things that I mentioned that uses it in the logic? We have built a manageability framework around Acha. And this is the framework that basically makes it easier for the developer to use it. Easily subscribe to a stream. Once you have a code, you can easily deploy it. And this is something that was important. The second thing, I said it before also, we don't want the developer to have to deal with all of the aspects of fault tolerance, recovery of actors, and so on. This is something that we have built a framework that basically uses the supervision model in Acha in order to be able to recover from certain scenarios. It could be a failure of an actor, failure of a topology, any kind of failure even in the node level, and to be able to recover from any failure at the level of the cluster. And this is something that Acha does provide you with the building blocks, but you have to develop it yourself in order to maintain it and be able to recover of all of this. So this is basically the wrapper for the Acha cluster that we have introduced. So this is, I talked about how we implemented this data ingestion layer. Another nice thing that we have done here, and I would like to share, is using Docker and CoreOS to basically make this much more easy to deploy. So I'm sure that many of you heard about Docker, basically a framework, open source, that allows you to package your application in a way that will be easy to deploy. And it's creating a lot of buzz, so I'm sure that many of you have heard about it. CoreOS is a lightweight operating system based on Linux that basically allows you to have multiple containers of Docker, and by that you can basically have manage a cluster of Dockerized solutions. So one single node of Docker is nice, but it doesn't help much because it's not a cluster, it's not fault tolerant, you can't do much with it. Once you have CoreOS involved, you are able now to basically have clusters, and CoreOS is also smart enough to manage them and to automatically use the resources that it has in the cluster. If there's a node down, it can take it up and then put a container that is required back again online. So basically for each of the components that I showed before in this flow, we have created a Docker container. And this gives a very nice flexibility of being able to load the right mixture of containers, the ones that you need, in order for your solution. So it could be that you don't need, let's say, a scalable broker. You can do well with a broker, so don't use Kafka. Or let's say that you don't care about you don't need the MQTT at all, you just want to use Kafka. So you can just don't use the broker at all, and you can begin with Kafka. So it makes it very modular, and you can just pick the right containers, build the cluster based on with CoreOS, and deploy it anywhere easily, either in on-premise or in a cloud service. So this is very powerful. So I want to leave some time for questions, so let me just summarize, and I hope that I saw that there are people who are trying to ask questions. I'll be happy to answer. So what we did was to basically solve the problem of ingestion in the IoT scenario. It goes beyond moving the data into cloud. You want to be able to do much more. I'm not saying that everything has to happen in the ingestion. Some of it can happen in the device. Some of it will happen in the at rest, where the data resides. But a lot of it can happen as the data is being ingested, and it allows you to react much faster and to enrich your data as it flows into your container. The second thing is that this has to be scalable and fault tolerant, which I showed you how we did that. And of course, this ability to make it portable and modular with Docker and CoreOS. So now, if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. Moty.fania@intel.com. So I'll be here. Anyone who has questions or want to talk, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you very much.